Little Astronomy with Hampshire College astronomer from Kainaat Studios, Dr. Salman Hameed, Mr. Universe. Couple updates. One, we had Radiolab on to talk about the naming of a quasi-moon in our solar system, and you were on the committee that's narrowing it down. I put out there that it should be called the Death Star. Am I on the short list?
I cannot reveal the names yet. There's a short list, and everybody will get to vote on it.
But am I on it?
Well, I cannot reveal that yet.
That means no. I keep losing and losing over and over again.
I think that's probably true.
The other update is we were last week on the show, the day before the election, talking about the implications that the vote would have for the world of science. After this big preamble about how we weren't going to get into the weeds of politics, and then we totally got into the weeds of politics, which my news director, Sam Hudzik at NEPM News, thought was hilarious. So we're going to do the same thing again. The election is over. The results are in. And Elon Musk is our new scientific overlord. What are the implications of the recent election, in your opinion, about the world of science, astronomy, and all space travel and more?
And I was going to say, and the results are hilarious.
Are they?
There were some counting issues. All
right. So what are the implications going to be as far as you can see them in your perspective, Dr. Salman Hameed?
So there are different ways of, different layers in terms of science that we can think of. We mentioned climate change, for example, last time. And that certainly, the Paris Agreement, Trump, at the time when he was president, he had pulled the U.S. out. And there is a pretty good chance that he will do that again. I'm returning from Nevada. I was there over the weekend because of a memorial and in Las Vegas, but not for the usually why people go over there. And there were a couple of things that when I was flying back, I was thinking about. The landscape is visually stunning when you are flying from there, and it reminds you of being on Mars, and dry riverbeds and things like that. And one of the things, and then you see Vegas, the strip, all the large buildings over there, all the casinos, and the expansion of it and how it is, direction it's going. And to me, it just seemed like if you were to define insanity, that would be that in the context of climate change, in the context of the droughts that the U.S. is facing and rest of the world is facing. And that's why the elections were on my mind, because in some ways the capitalism gone sort of berserk in Vegas, and it's nowhere stopping. And people are not even stopping. I mean, the city is expanding over there, even though the conditions are worsening. And we can do that in the U.S. because we can sort of invest resources in it to make a dry place, use water. There are golf courses over there. Mm-hmm. But if you think in terms of the world, which you have to when you are thinking about climate change, this is where global inequities come in, because at other places you cannot even cool yourself down when the weather goes up. And same thing, by the way, in Vegas, where the temperatures have been, just like everywhere else, have been reaching really high. But at least in the US, you can afford an air conditioner, for example. But other places you don't. So there needs to be, this is not an option. You need to address climate change. But to me, Vegas was just you look at it and you go what are we doing? And this is not an emergency that sometimes people talk about, look, we really have to address. And then you look at the expansion of Las Vegas, and yes, there are some green projects over there. Yes, it's a desert. But that's, again, a more sort of light covering. And this is one of the casualties of the elections, and that's going to be the climate change. The other thing, I should mention, the other thing that I was thinking while flying over this spectacular landscape, which looks like Mars, and that is, the timescales. So this is another 4 years of potential Trump presidency. He's been here, maybe the last 8 years we've been dealing with that. this is nothing. If you look at the landscape, and that's why I love the desert landscapes, because it just tells you, it just shows you how those features are formed. And those features, you realize it takes them hundreds of millions of years to form. Like, you have these dry river valleys. You have, we flew over Grand Canyon, for example, and you see the Colorado River in there carving out, and you can actually see how long these structures take to be built. And these timescales are huge compared to, for example, a presidential term. And in that sense, it realizes, humans are just a very recent sort of presence on the planet, and humans will be gone because of all the actions. Earth will be fine. Earth will be okay because of these larger time frames that comes in. And you can actually combine it with, last week was Carl Sagan's 90th birthday as well, and so you can also think about the pale blue dot and his thoughts about autocrats, his thoughts about various rulers, good or bad or other things. They all think about, well, they are there, this is everything, but they are still a tiny they are fighting over sort of this tiny speck, and for a very short period of time. So those were some of my thoughts regarding that. I'm glad you asked about climate change, but that's a longer rant that you got.
The thing about it is, from thinking about it from that perspective, and what is slightly terrifying, given that we have escalating conflicts all over the globe and a giant nuclear arsenal on this planet, I think of the astronomer Fermi, who has what is called Fermi's paradox. The idea that the universe is so old and so big that it's almost impossible that intelligent civilizations able to communicate would not have existed at one time or another. One of the solutions as to why we have not heard from any of them yet is because once a civilization is capable of space travel and communication beyond its solar system, is that they inevitably destroy themselves. It is, granted, the most depressing, in my opinion, answer to Fermi's paradox. I like the one better, where they build a giant sphere around their whole solar system, so they're using every available photon from their sun to power all their energy needs in a clean way. But then we can't see them because we're not getting any energy out of their solar system. That's my favorite answer. Least favorite answer is we destroy ourselves when we have the capacity to. Are we, with Las Vegas as a microcosm of what you've witnessed, with rampant capitalism and a brainiac or alleged brainiac like Elon Musk, barreling towards technological advancements in space travel and beyond? Do you have pause that we are, with the potential of a world war brewing, with Korea now entering the front in Russia, and whatever is going to happen with Israel and Palestine and Iran, and a future president who has seemingly wanted all the guardrails off of these international conflicts, while at the same time saying somehow he's going to end these wars on day one? Does that give you some scientific pause?
Not scientific pause, because a lot of these things are not science, right? This is human behavior, and that's the reason. The answers to Fermi's paradox. I don't know what the answer to that is, because we just have one example.
Right. No one knows the answer. It's a theoretical.
It's a theoretical thing, and despite of all the UFOs you hear about and so on and so forth, that's one of the reasons why any discovery of life, or especially about any technological civilization, would be huge, because of a lot of these questions, because we just do not know, and we have problems with understanding cultural differences even here on Earth, even though we share the same biology. So let alone thinking about what some other civilization, some other humans might be, or some other species might be doing on another planet, on a whole other context. So I don't know what the answer to that is. But in that context, I don't know about the future of international aspects on Earth either. What would have been better? We have talked about nuclear weapons, and that we need to really worry about it. But that, to a certain degree, has been more of a bipartisan thing. It's not just Republicans, or it's not just Trump. And in the same way, I know it won't be a very popular position, especially here in this area. But I think in some sense, President Biden's policy, the way it was going in Ukraine, that might have led to nuclear war as well, because it was slowly escalating. So yes, was he right in doing that? A lot of it, yes. But on the other hand, it might have threatened Russia more, and that might have led to nuclear war as well. Whereas, from Trump's perspective, one thing is that he's about his own thing, and in some sense, his actions might be, at least in the short run, might be able to end the war. Now that would not be good for Ukraine, nor for the world order, but maybe. So I mean, I think we can have multiple positions. We can see that. I don't think I can say with clear conscience that President Biden's position, the way it was accelerating, that whether that would not have led to a nuclear confrontation or not, especially if Russia had been isolated or sort of had been losing, and this had been come out that they might have used tactical nuclear weapons. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm saying, right, but if they get used, then we have broken that barrier, and it would extend much further. Not to mention that it's not just about nuclear weapons. I mean, large-scale bombs are being used in Gaza. I mean, they are used on Ukraine as well. So those things are already happening. I think that's a much more depressing conversation, because that is a little bit about what humans are. I mean, I actually think we also used drones in a way that we never got a chance, and by we I mean humans of this planet, and also American citizens to a certain degree, about what is the right military usage of the drones. But that barrier was broken by not a Republican, but President Obama, and he was using drones in Pakistan and Afghanistan. Now, here it may not come as a big news items when that is happening, but since I'm originally from Pakistan, I mean, we know the news coverage that comes over there. So when those drones were being used at that time, so instead of everybody getting together and say, whoa, should we use unmanned drones for firing from the sky and killing people, in which a lot of times innocent civilians would die, we didn't. And so that is a complex issue, but I think that a lot of it is bipartisan, and some of the impact which we are talking about, we are in the middle of it, is also, some of those things are bipartisan. So one of the things that is expected, that Trump is going to be tough on China, and but that also is bipartisan, but then there is a degree in certain cases, and under President Trump, under Trump's last when he was president before, he did initiate what came to be known as the China Initiative. And that was to really target Chinese academics, Chinese scientists, or Chinese origin scientists here in the US. And that was a terrible thing, because oftentimes there were clerical errors, the small things we mentioned last time as well, and that ensnared a lot of people, a lot of innocent people in there, and it had a chilling effect. And President Biden did remove that bit. But overall, the tough on China aspect is still there. The collaboration is coming to an end. And in fact, under President Trump, it's likely that it's going to eliminate any collaboration with Chinese scientists, and which would be a terrible thing. That again is one of those things that it's going to be terrible for the world, because here are the two superpowers, cooperation, especially in areas like science, and because oftentimes those are pretty blanket bans on it, that you cannot get national, like NASA, or it doesn't matter which area you are talking about. There is often not much differentiation between collaboration about, hey, the nature of the farthest galaxies, or the origins of the moon, versus something that could be considered as more military oriented and things like that.
Well, if there were better collaboration in 2019/2020, when the COVID pandemic was breaking out, between the nation where it got its start and the United States, who knows what kind of level of communication, how that might have changed the trajectory of that disease.
Yeah, absolutely. And that again goes back to the thing that, for the betterment of the planet, here are the two big powers that for science. wouldn't it be great, that if they are talking to each other, and again, at a human level, at citizen level, there is not that kind of acrimony that you find, for example, in the political rhetoric. And usually that's the way to soften or solve a lot of these issues. So that I think is certainly likely that President Trump is going to have an executive order restoring the China initiative, which was deeply, deeply damaging.
Is there more about the world of science you want to talk about?
Well, I think there is Musk in the room
Yeah,
that we have to talk about.
Yeah, a new elephant in the room named Elon Musk.
And I think that's the other aspect that people are asking: what's going to happen now that? And this is a clear case where Elon Musk invested over $100 million in the election of Donald Trump, and I'm assuming that that is not just for a good sort of intentions or charity purposes, but he may want something in return. And so what's going to happen? I'm just going to focus. There is a lot of things that we can talk about, including, for example, his autonomous vehicles. They are under investigations, and what's going to happen to those federal investigations, because there have been accidents and the way those have been reported. There are many other investigations going on, and most likely these are going to go away. But also there is a Starlink satellite. There's a new contract that's coming up. So that's going to be part of this.
And we've mentioned before that Starlink is really problematic when it comes from Earth astronomy, trying to see the stars through this array of satellites, of hundreds, if not thousands of satellites he's put up there.
Yeah, I mean, since 2010, the number, I think there were a few thousand, about 1,000 satellites in 2010, and now there are, just by Starlink, has added that number to over 6,000. And they're, again, terrible for astronomy. There are other satellites also now coming in, but Starlink is certainly the biggest one, but that's a government contract. It's going to be part of that as well in providing Wi-Fi or internet service to rural areas. That contract most likely is going to get renewed and go over there. But what I want to talk about a little bit to the end is its impact on the space program. And that's going to be interesting because Elon Musk has always been focused on Mars and not the moon. In fact, he says, why are we wasting time on the moon? And there has been the debate overall in the space community whether U.S. should first go to the moon and then Mars, and then that's what's happening right now. There's a Mars direct option that was also there. And Elon Musk is certainly more interested in going to Mars. We can talk at another time why and why his obsession over there. But it looks like President Trump, President-elect Trump, he actually said that in one of his rallies, Elon, get those rocket ships going because we want to reach Mars. Now, is that going to change course for NASA? And that's a likelihood. And I think the moon program, which was also launched, actually, the Artemis program, Artemis Accords were really launched under previous term of President Trump. And so I think the moon stuff is still going to be there. Right now, it's not going to happen before, I think, 26 at least. My guess would be that before the end of President Trump's this term, he's going to make sure that there is a human landing on the moon. Previously, return to the moon. Previously, I think there may have been hey, yeah, it would be great to have it, but I think he's going to make sure that that happens. Now, there are other aspects as well. Jeff Bezos, who actually, again, famously his paper did not endorse Kamala Harris.
Or Trump.
Trump.
Didn't endorse anybody in his paper.
His company, Blue Origins, which actually is not as showy as SpaceX, but they have been really focused on the moon. And most of the money of the contracts that are there that NASA has given are split between Elon Musk, SpaceX, and Jeff Bezos, Blue Origins for the moon. So what's going to happen to that? I think that will be an internal billionaire to billionaire struggle. Poor billionaires, that's what I would say to that. But here is what I'm going to throw out. We don't know whether that's going to happen or not, but there is a long shot that Trump may go for Mars. And because Elon Musk may actually really push for that. Can it happen during President Trump's second term? Well, there is a very long shot, and again, there is chatter about that. There are some op-eds that are being written in the space community, and the idea is that, well, his Starship, which is making progress, this is SpaceX's Starship, and it actually, because there are a lot of both its impact on the surrounding communities, its impact on the surrounding ecosystem, there are a lot of regulations that that the Starship testing has to go through. And Elon Musk has been complaining about the fact that it has slowed him down quite a bit. And he just wants to do it. And there have been a lot of issues with that, but he just wants to do it. So one possibility might be that if Mars become President Trump's obsession, which is, I would put it at 50-50 chance, then it may be like the Apollo program, like, that you must do this at any cost, and that there would be a humans to Mars before his second term is over. Now, that was not in the cards. That was not in planning, but that's a possibility. And the reason I'm saying that is because you cannot just go to Mars. There are certain orientations of Earth with respect to Mars where you can actually have a launch of rockets where you can get there. And there is a window in 26 and there is a window in 28. And those are two windows that are coming in. There is a small chance, and again, there are some vocal people are saying that, that maybe in 26 there can be a test of Starship to Mars, and 28 maybe a crewed mission to Mars that can get there before President Trump's second term is over. I think it will get there in 29. So I mean, again, so there are mixed feelings about that. We have talked about it. Going to space is not as important as how we go to space. I mean, I think this is what values we bring in. And while this could be interesting as a lifelong space enthusiast, I'm also, to a certain degree, there is a little flicker of excitement. Well, that's actually interesting. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, the way both Musk and Trump have expressed their views and expressed their lack of concern, let's put it this way, for the environment, for safety of other people and other things, I'm not 100% sure. I think that this would be a positive thing, not to mention that Apollo program, for however you think about it, was waste of money. It was for Cold War. It was not for individual narcissistic sort of context. Whereas this, to me, it seems like, I mean, if you think, oh, wow, that would be a great achievement, but for what? It would be for a very personal, individual aspect of that. So we'll see. But I think Mars may have just entered into a conversation which would not have been had Trump not won the election.
And even if we don't actually get to Mars in the Trump presidency, given that Trump owns his own social media company, Elon Musk owns his own social media company, Jeff Bezos owns his own newspaper, they could just manipulate whatever information they want so that the public would believe that we landed on Mars, just like they believe we landed on the moon.
No. Okay, now, you just have to take it a little too far. It's already depressing enough, and misinformation is a key component. But so no, although if you are interested in seeing it, I think it was Capricorn 1. This was a movie that came out a while back. O.J. Simpson is in it, if I remember correctly. and that was a movie about the fake landing on Mars. But anyway, that's outside. But no, we did go to the moon, and it looks like we're going to go back to the moon. I just want, and that should be whatever. If you are going to fake a story about how good humans took care of the moon or Mars, wherever they fake landed. Okay, if you're going to do that, have good values associated with that. Don't just be about the fake landing.